I don't want to show you all the mathematics, but you can find this in any bioeconomic fisheries model. If you do all the maths based on Gordon-Schaefer, you can actually show that the limit as the biomass of fish in the ocean goes to zero, the growth rate has to be equal to R in equilibrium. So it's almost matching your growth per year that's your intrinsic growth rate. And this to simplify, so we push the tin limit to zero. And you can show this very easily, but I don't want to burden you with that. And if you look at from the economic side also, if you try to maximize the profit or the rent, limit to x goes to zero is equals to delta, which is the discount rate. So actually your growth depends on the discount rate. From the economic point of view, is equals to your growth rate from ecology. So in equilibrium, the two are equal. If you want to have equilibrium, you have to balance the two. Because at that point, the owner of the fish is indifferent between leaving the fish in the ocean versus putting the fish in the bank. They will both give you the same return. So the fish bank and the money bank are equal. So then that's beautiful. And you stay. So that is what you get from these two equations. So based on this very simple logic, this is our index. And that's the beauty of the whole thing. That's the index. We take the ratio of your discount rate against your growth rate and then do some take away from one just to make the thing nice as we plot it. That is all our index. This is clearly not OHI. It is not Ocean Health Index. It's not even our management index. Very simple, powerful theory behind it, and beautiful results, I think. That's how I'll show you. So that's that. All right? What next? So I say putting life into the index, because this equation is dry, is simple, is boring, right? But when you start putting data there, becomes life. So let's see. How do you put life in this? So we created databases. We do have the official discount rate. So each government uses some discount rate to value their government projects. So you can find that. IMF, World Bank, National Statistics. So we have that. And then we also have, in the literature, intrinsic growth rates of many commercially exploited species. Some we don't have, Murdoch, and others have developed an empirical equation where if you don't have the data, you can actually calculate one, estimate. So we have calculated one for all the species that have been caught in the whole world before. So that's the thing. And of course, you need catches. Remember, all these are indicators, right? Both from economics and from ecology, we bring them together in an equation. So these are examples of discount rates for different countries. Oh, sorry, these are examples of intrinsic growth rate. Either we got from the literature or we calculated from Murdoch's equation. And orange roughly 2.5% increase a year. Pacific Grenadier, right? That. So you have species that are low and some that are very high. Yellowtail sole. Some of you can either tell me this is all. This is from the literature. I didn't make this up. Okay, I don't make everything up. Okay, so that is just examples for you to see. So essentially, if you look at Collins' equation, his papers, what he's saying is that managing this thing is much, much more difficult than managing this thing here, Pacific herring. Because this is just too productive. You can knock it off and it comes back very quickly. But if you knock this off, you have to wait 60 years to get it back. And this is actually supported by empirics. Orange roughy in Namibia, they found it in the early 90s. They gave experimental fishing to a few companies, and within 4 years, it was gone. It was like this. Yeah. So they mined it. It's almost like a non-renewable. So, but then these guys can sustain much more pressure, fishing pressure. And these are examples of discount rates for different countries. UK actually turns out to have quite a reasonable discount rate, unlike Indonesia, huh? And Iceland. Are you people surprised? Iceland got into a big financial crisis. You remember that? It was one of the countries that suffered most in Europe. And so, because the banks, loaned more money, 6 of the big guns, than the whole GDP of the country. So when the crisis came, they couldn't do much. In fact, Russia had to bail them. And they went into a quarrel with the UK because they couldn't pay their debt to the UK. So it was very much in the news. That's partly what you see here. So we have this for each country of the world. And so now just to show an illustration of how we calculate our index, we're using Newfoundland here as an example. And that's the ecosystem where, so we calculate our index for this ecosystem. Alida, this is your, yeah? So we calculate this for the index just to illustrate how this works. And that is a representation of the calculation. So one of the first things we do is, what are the species caught in this system? So you have to identify all that, right? For the year you are looking at. And then you say, what are the intrinsic growth rates of each of these species? Because we have the database, you can just pull it out and do this. Now, then the next question is, which countries actually fish in these waters? So we have for each country, and again, what are the discount rates, right? When you have a simple model, it's so nice, isn't it? Once we have these two things, we can actually go ahead. So we do this, and there are weightings, right? See, this is thicker, right? Canada catches most of this. That's what it means, just for illustration purpose. So you have to know the proportions they take, right? Because we want to connect it to their discount rate and how all those impact on the species you are looking at. So we do this for half degree by half degree cells in this ecosystem for this particular example. And when you do that, this is the results you get. So you have a picture like this, right? It's not smooth, don't worry too much. It's just to illustrate. So what this thing tells you is that these areas are quite vulnerable if you think of the species in there and their intrinsic growth rate, and the people who fish there, their discount rate. So it's the combi. But actually, this, for some reason, this is good. And it could be because they have more herrings and the like, or they have countries that are a bit more patient, right? They have low discount rate. So that's what you get. And we do this for the whole world, typically. Okay, so just to make the point about the need for this thing we are doing here, where you bring social scientists and ecologists interdisciplinary to work together. If you were, like William was doing, he was looking at vulnerability only from the point of view of ecology. So if he were to plot where the areas in the ocean that he thinks are more vulnerable to fishing based on his ecological models, this is the picture you will get. These areas are easy, right? These areas are more difficult. The more red you are, the more vulnerable you are. That's the ecological picture. And clearly, this is not the whole picture, right? Now, how about if somebody like me, a crazy economist, I'm just sitting in my office and doing my economics alone, and I say, I use economic thinking to say, these are the vulnerable areas. Brazil is in trouble, actually, for some reason, right? So this is what the economics alone will tell you, the degree of vulnerability based on the discount rate. Both pictures are wrong, right? Because there's interaction between the two. Now, when you bring those two together, this is what you get. If you take the economics and the ecology together, this is what you get. So if you guys were in doubt about working together in interdisciplinary groups, right? I hope this nails it for you. If you are just sitting doing your thing alone, as an ecologist or as an economist, you're missing a lot. So that is the modified picture in the scheme of things. It's quiet. I see people trying to understand. So nobody has told me that this is. Wait, what? How is Australia doing? But remember, yeah. So it's not a good place to look. Thank you for that. So we should just shut down all your management.
So this is in zone, I presume.
Eh?
This is in zone.
In the EEZ.
With an EZ.
Yeah, EEZ. Yeah.
So
Yeah, because you see lots of blue here. Actually, it's the whole. We did that too. Yeah.
have you done the ones around the Antarctic?
Here? Yeah, we did with the data we have. Yeah.
But there's no discount rate. Where did you get the discount rate for around the Antarctic ones?
For the countries that are active there, yeah. So the countries that are fishing in the given area, yeah. So, yes. Alida, go ahead, please. Speakers?
All right, on the shelf.
Yeah.
All right, on the shelf. So this is like the ratio indicator that we talked about the other day.
Precisely. Yeah.
So where it's red, is it red because the species have a low intrinsic growth rate? Is it red because the discount rate's very high? Is it red because the countries that fish there have high discount rates?
Yeah.
Or is it, in the good area because they have low discount rates? So there's many things going on here.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering if you have taken this a little bit further to, like with the OHI, where you can break it down and see what's creating the score.
Absolutely.
Whether
yes.
you have anything within this where it allows you to then understand why it's red or why it's blue, and then obviously then that leads to, well, what can we do about that?
Exactly. No, the data we have, you can easily see that. If you just if you just go under my maps, which you cannot, but there's the data that clearly shows whether you have fast-growing fish, that's the reason, or slow-growing and the discount rate. Yeah, we do have that, and it will be. I think in the paper we have more detailed results detailing the kind of thing you're talking about. Yeah.
And I have a second question.
Yes, please go ahead.
So, as a graduate student at UBC, I learned about discount rates. I even got lectured by Colin Clark. But I still have a problem with discount rates. I think they're this kind of ephemeral thing. For me, a growth rate is, I can understand that. I'm a biologist, right? And I understand why you use discount rates, but it's still very vague to me how they're calculated.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm just wondering whether others in the room feel the same way, and whether you might be able to convince us that they're real.
Yeah, okay.
And how we actually get to them.
Yeah. Excellent, excellent. Yeah, so the question, is it to me or to the whole? I think you had, the first part is to the group here.
Yeah, hands up. Who would like Rashid to really explain what a discount rate is?
Oh yeah, that's the whole,
Okay.
You noted it down. Yeah, you noted it down. So how do I start with this? The discount rate is a number, usually in percentage. And you can also think, if you start thinking in terms of interest rate, maybe that will be better. Or mortgage rate, if those of you who own houses and have house loans, mortgage, yeah. There's a rate you pay each year to the bank. They own your house until you pay off, right? Or interest rate, if you are doing business, you go borrow money, you pay the interest rate. So the discount rate is like that. We describe the discount as the price of money, essentially. Very good. Calculation is another thing. Yeah. Now, there are two discount rates. I mean, you can divide them into two. You have the official discount rate. Is that you? No. You have the official discount rate. And Statistics Office of virtually every country actually has a system to calculate this. They have a method. And usually, there are two components if you go into the deep economics of this. There's something we call time preference. So each one of us have our time preference, right? Some of us are patient, some of us are less patient. And that is factored in how quickly you want your benefits to come to you. So that's the time preference component of this thing. And the economists who spend all their time calculating that, right, empirically and through surveys and so on. Then there is the part of this which is based on the expectation of growth for a country. So if we believe that future generations are going to be richer than us, then the discount rate is usually positive. So it's a tool for intergenerational distribution, you know. So you calculate, if you believe that future Indians are going to be richer, then you say, okay, that means their values will be compensated for by the big growth, and therefore you can discount now. You see that? And then there is a way they measure that also. So these are the two components. Now, there is also the private discount rate, which researchers are actually been trying to estimate, including Louise Terre, my postdoc. She did a master's with me, PhD, and she's now postdoc. So, yeah. And her study was actually partly to measure the discount rate of fishes in Sabah, Malaysia. So this, we use a survey protocol. We relied on somebody who knows how to really design this, another committee member, a professor in forestry at UBC, to design how to ask people and try to pull out their discount rate. And there are various experimental ways. For example, you have kids, people do this, kids in school, right? 5-year-olds, you go to them and say, you know what? I have a bar of chocolate today. Now, I have a bar of chocolate, and I have 5 bars of chocolate. But you get the one now, and you get the 5 in 2 days' time. Which one do you prefer? They all run for the one now, right? And you can use that information to calculate their discount rate right away. So there's a whole field of how people calculate this. So Louise did that and actually came up with estimates for Sabah, and people have done it for other countries. So, yeah. So there are ways to do it. I don't know whether I've convinced you, but you know how I'm going to convince you, Alida. And I have witnesses here, okay? You give me $1,000. Now, I'll give you back your $1,000 in 10 years' time, exactly $1,000. Will you like that deal or not?
No.
No, so she understands discounting.
Something if we take, in case I take a loan, I have to pay 50 lakhs, but I don't have it. So the bank gives it to me,
Yeah.
and then I repay back, but then I pay much more the amount.
Exactly. That's the price of the money you get. So waiting, there is a price to waiting. And there are many reasons for that. Number one, who knows? Who knows who will be here in 10 years? Do you know? I don't know. So the mere fact that there's uncertainty, right? Or even if I'm here, I may be so broke she can't get her money back, right? So all those things, the risk and uncertainty and all those come into the calculation of discount rates. Very interesting area. In fact, I was told by somebody in the Nobel Committee that she believes that in the near future, some economist somewhere will win a Nobel Prize on this subject area. Because it's really fundamental to all we do in economics. And if you change this parameter a little bit, the outcomes are completely different. So anyone who wants a Nobel Prize in this room, this is one potential subject area for you. You have to have a big brain, okay? Yeah. So how does that go? A little bit better, Elena? Okay, yeah, thank you.
Can I, if I can just add to that, Elena, the way that I usually explain it is if you had $10,000 and you wanted to invest it, would you invest it in Germany in the bank, or would you invest it in Ivory Coast or Chad or Iceland in the bank?
Good one.
But it's the opposite. Right.
The world. It's not just, it's okay, okay.
Eh? That's a good one. It's a good one. It's very good, actually.
But I still would give my money to Germany because it's just more stable. So the rest is just, I don't know, the interest rate might be 4% in, I don't know, Indonesia or somewhere, but still the inflation might be much higher. So
Yeah.
in the end I have less money.
That's a good point. Remember, in economics, we talk about real numbers. And all that I'm talking here are real numbers. But what are that? What is that? We have real numbers and nominal numbers. Now, if you have a real price, that means you've taken away inflation. Okay? If you have a real wage, we are saying that we've taken away the effect of inflation. A nominal is inflation is in there. So your point. So when I say it's 4%, inflation has already been taken out. Okay? But it's a very good point that you made. From the discount rate, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, what is opposite to interest?
Discounting, calculating discounting would be something just doing it like the interest, but something this we're spending and this is something we're benefiting from before. Both are actually benefiting.
Yeah, you just have different parties, right?
The other way.
Yeah. So if you are the one giving me the money, well, I pay to you, and I have to pay you. So it's the same coin, different size here, sides. Okay. Yes.
Rashid, I have one more question. So thank you very much for that explanation. But I don't see how this fits with the open access problem. I mean, because so this makes sense that a rational person who had, if you could leave the fish for the next year, that would be, some kind of decision you can make. But if you think somebody else is going to take that fish if you don't catch it, then the discount rate becomes...
It becomes infinity.
Right.
Yeah, that's the point I was making, exactly, yeah. If there's no tomorrow, the discount rate is infinity. And I have a very nice example of this. There was a guy, this was in the news, a Brit, who went to his doctor and he was diagnosed with cancer, terminal 1. And the doctor says, from all that we've seen, you cannot exceed 6 months. So this guy goes home, retires from work, takes the retirement fund, started having a bash. He wanted to finish the money before he dies, right? Seriously, this is not a joke. That is discounting. So the news changes discount rate to infinity virtually, or just below infinity. But the thing that caught my attention, this guy spent all his money on the day the doctor told him, but you know what? The day came and he didn't die. so he went to welfare. That's how the news became a big story. Yeah. So this is real. So.
I was just going to add, as an elaboration there, because I think your answer was very good. This, as you explained very clearly, that this does not account for the management system.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So if you look at this as sort of an intermediate step,
yeah.
So this is an indicator of vulnerability, bioeconomic vulnerability in the absence of management.
Yeah.
You take Iceland, as it stands, its economic situation is, it would mean that it's highly vulnerable. But if you overlay the fact that it's got an ITQ system that deals with these other things, then that may
modify
change to and other places where they don't have mitigating management, it remains red.
Yeah, that's really a good point. And one of the goals I have for this is number one is to take our map and look at different countries and their management regime. So we identify the red areas where countries are not doing well and where they are doing well, right? That will already be additional information on this. We say, hey, look at the world. And we do have indicators all over about how countries are doing. So we'll say, okay, Norway, how is Norway doing? Let's say there's a bit of red in Iceland. And we check, and Iceland passes almost all tests of good management. Okay, so you have that. Then you come to Guinea-Bissau. It's blue, but they fail all. Then you start separating countries, and this could be a very simple, fast thing to add value to this. And the next stage will then be, how about if we layer management? How will that modify this picture? Yeah, step by step. It's just the beginning, really. Yeah. It's just the beginning, but as I would say at the end, it still can be helpful in some ways. All right, any more? Yeah, please. Yeah.
Because you were trying to tell them, you don't have to make it sustainable, right?
So she's asking whether we can have negative discount rate.
No. Will it be a negative influence on the negativity to sustainability?
Yeah. So because people know this now, are they going to... Actually, that can happen, unfortunately. Yeah, that can happen, right? So people now, if people didn't understand this, you can get different reactions. And it was in Qingdao, actually, here. I talked about discounting, and one guy comes to me. He's not a Chinese. He's an American professor, retired. He came to me and said, okay, what you talk about is reasonable to me, but I don't care. I don't care. If I have fish, I may just catch them all now. So, okay, you get that. And then another time I gave a talk, there was a professor from Ghana, and she came to me and said, oh my God, I think we should get you in all our fishing villages to talk about this, because they don't know what they're doing. If they know this, they will really fish more carefully for their children, right? Different reaction, and you can't tell. You just have to report what you see, right? That is the science. And people can abuse it or use it well. I have no control, right? But yeah, it can lead to.
So how do you relate discounting rate to subsidy rate?
Yeah, subsidies, yeah. So in addition to the management, one of the things we can do is to talk about subsidies. And I think I alluded to it a little bit when I said, if you are being given subsidies, right, because that motivates more fishing, essentially it increases your discount rate. You know, the effect will be the same as increasing your discount rate in terms of trying to fish more. Okay? Yes, sir.
In multi-species fishery, where the same gear is in multi-species fishery, where the same gear is targeting different fishes, there may be a big factor, because that bycatch, trash, discards, all those issues are coming up.
No, I agree with your comment. It will make this thing more difficult to calculate. But you will agree with me that in principle it's possible to calculate it. You just have to do hard work, right? How to allocate things to what and so on. It's a big factor, oh yeah. And it will.
Or all the species listed? How is it? Just the commercial species?
Commercial species, really. It's official FAO data.
Okay.
So it's commercial mostly, yeah. They do capture, and the more we hit them, reminding them that you don't have small-scale fisheries, they're making efforts now to include them more and more. And that's a good thing, but it's mainly commercial, yeah.
There are others, like, say for example in India you have the molluscan fisheries, the clam fisheries, all those small fisheries are there which are not actually included.
So we are missing quite a bit in that sense, and I agree with you. I mean, it's official data. Yeah. So the picture I'm giving in many places will actually be too optimistic. Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, fair. Huh? This is MEPS, Marine Ecological Progress Series. Yeah. 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 You get to see. We are waiting for the paper. Okay. Yeah, we sent it 2 days after revision, so hopefully we'll get an accept now, and then you can have it. Okay, so I know time has been, I'm very close. So, and you can do all sorts of things. These are just looking at the mesas, right? Because the pelagics are making places very blue here. So if you want to look at different things, tunas alone, whatever you can do, the data is there. And, I'm going backwards, yeah. Because I'm in a hurry, so you go back. Can you imagine that he wants to finish and he's going back? How can you finish? Anyway, so what can this index be used for? And we've touched on that quite a bit. I mean, just like I've said it many times, this is just the beginning in the long road to developing what we consider could be a full-fledged bioeconomic vulnerability index, and that can then be used for practical management. This is just the beginning. It's just a little thing, but still this kind of model can quickly inform policymakers and managers about the most vulnerable parts of their ocean, right? And I think you can already do that. If you take out management, you can say, okay, in this area, we have fish that is more vulnerable. We have fishes that are also vulnerable, right? Because they go for the fish. And that is already some useful information. You can check this and say, I don't have good management. I better put one there. So provide information for effective spatial management. At least this will give you some ideas where you need to put more effort and so on, right? Where you need to put more effort in terms of management. Because what this does to you is it identifies for you very roughly, I admit, and quickly, the areas of the ocean where fish and humans can coexist. You know whom I'm quoting here? Have you seen that quote somewhere? George Bush, actually. Yeah, he says something funny about that. I know fish and man can coexist. Yeah. So this tells you areas where you can actually, we can fish reasonably and we'll be okay. So, and last but not the least, actually, it can help you prioritize. If you have a budget to manage your fishery, which every management authority has limitations, therefore, where should we really put more effort? Just in a broad sense. Okay. Thank you for your attention.